I still have a red paper clip. For those of you who were at church on Pentecost Sunday. Anyway, because our sanctuary is beautifully decorated to represent Pentecost. It really never ends, Pentecost, because the Spirit is with us. We seek to know its will, that its will and our will be one. There's an old song called "One is the Loneliest Number." But not when our will is at one with God, not to be confused. Some years ago, my grandchildren, when they were young, they lived on Cape Cod, and I was sitting with them one day, putting them to bed at night, and reading the same story about the goldfish that grew too large because it was being fed too much. And I listened to Rachel and Christopher giggle at the funny parts and get serious at some of the other parts. Suddenly it came over me that I was reliving being a dad to little children again. I was thoroughly enjoying that. It reminded me of an evening long ago when I put Julie, our oldest daughter, to bed. Good thing she's not here today. She'd be turning red. And when we tell her that, when we visit her in Florida a couple of weeks from now, she'll turn red there too. So just letting you know. After a story from her favorite book, and a drink of water, and a prayer with dozens and dozens of thank you gods, a sing through of something like Eensy Weensy Spider, and another drink of water, and the assurance that her favorite security blanket was in bed with her, and then one last trip to the bathroom, and another sip of water, one more kiss, and a mild warning not to get out of bed again. I was finally able to go down and sit in the living room in our orange recliner chair and enjoy a little time in front of the TV. But after just a few minutes, a scream came from Julie's bedroom, followed by a veil of unstoppable tears, and I went into her room and she was holding her tongue. She said she had burned it. Now that's not something I expected to hear about. Until I realized she had taken a lick of her nightlight. Remember that, Pat? No, proves my story. It was both funny and surprising at the same time. I realized that being a parent is a world full of surprises that can happen at any time of the day or night. That was in the early days of my learning how to be a dad. Today, which is Father's Day, brings to mind the 5th commandment of the 10, which says, honor your father and your mother so that your days may be long in the land that God is giving you. Now we know that today there are many mothers who do fathering and fathers who do mothering, and there are single parents who fill the shoes of both, and all of us are responsible for young people growing up in the world of today. And so none of us are free from some of the insights I'd like to share with you, even though it be Father's Day. This originally this commandment spoke to the adult citizens of the day and urged them to honor their parents by arranging for their care when they became older and less able. It was a way of keeping society well organized and caring when parents were unable to do what they had once been able to do. Family has always been of great importance in some form or another, even a church family, which we are one. Very important when our relationships are consistently together as a community. So it is appropriate that we honor fathers today. I begin with myself because I am a father. My oldest son, Kimball, is 47, right? I'm checking with my wife because I have a hard time remembering. Let me read these so I'll get it right. My oldest daughter, Julie, is 45. My youngest daughter, Crystal, is 42. Our youngest son, Jason, will be 40. Now what does that make me? A father. goodness I had an answer for that. Am I a perfect father? No. Do I love my kids? Yes. Did my kids ever get angry? Really angry at me?
Yes.
Yes. Do I love my kids? Yes. Did I always say and do the right thing? No. Do I love my kids? Yes. Did my kids always feel that I completely understood them? Did I never bored them with a sermon or anything like that? No. Do I love my kids? Yes. Do my kids know that I love them? I think they do. I pray they do. Someone has written, our relationships with our children are as important as the things we do for them. We don't honor parents because they're perfect. We honor them because they try so hard and they love us so much, and they, though imperfect, are God's gifts to us. I was honoring my father in my mind just the other day. Dad died in 1972. And I always go through a card store at these times, and my mother's birthday, my father's birthday, and their wedding anniversary, and at Easter time. And I look up a card that is specifically designed for them. I don't buy it, but I send it in my heart and in my mind, in remembrance of them. Writer Edith Schaefer describes family as being a perpetual relay of truth in the process of everyday living. Keeping with that image of a relay, some of the batons in this relay of truth that my dad, knowingly or unknowingly, passed on to us kids include the following. And these could be for anyone or from anyone. Determination. A stick-to-it attitude, even when the responsibility becomes heavy and solutions to challenges come slowly and are difficult to figure out. Another is honesty. I really can't think or remember my dad ever misrepresenting the truth, perhaps because he did it so well I didn't know he was. But nevertheless, I don't recall that ever affecting me directly as something that turned out not to be true. He was a hard act to follow on that subject, and as I formed a personal conscience, sense of conscience of my own. Responsibility was another trait for which I would honor my dad. He was dependable, trustworthy. Although I do remember he borrowed one of those lawn rollers. You fill it with water and you roll your lawn and mow down all of the molehills and all of the bumps and ridges in your yard to make it nice and flat. He kept that for 10 years before he returned it to the neighbor. And we never let him forget it. We ribbed him about that. But it was a neighbor. The neighbor really wanted it. He could have let us know. Laughter and a healthy sense of humor was another thing. I have even passed on to my children some of my father's silly poems and jokes and humorous sayings. Now, I don't know where he got this, but as I understand it, love is the pitter-patter bumpsification of the heart that causes a condition on the mental cerebellum which causes complete oblivion to the delinquencies of your inamorata. Did you know that? That's something my father knew. And his father knew. That's where he got it. Now we have it. I believe that laughter is one of God's beautiful gifts of perspective to us that often saves us from carrying intolerable burdens and never remembering to see how funny it is when we're lugging those around. Every now and then at our dinner table, we get to laughing and laugh ourselves out of our chairs, sometimes onto the floor as kids, and it was often my dad who started it. Humor adds to life a necessary ingredient of wit. Enjoyable, delightful expressions and thought which lift our spirits and lighten our days and allow us not to take ourselves too seriously. Other things for which I honor my dad include self-control and punctuality and compassion and diligence at a task. I remember building an elaborate tree house in an apple tree with some friends in a neighbor's yard. We called it the Treehouse Club. My dad helped us with the framing and the construction of this tree house, sat with us as we put it together, and defined some rules of membership in the Treehouse Club. We thought we needed a president, a vice president, and a secretary. And we thought we needed rules for allowing people in and not allowing some others and keeping them out. I always remember my father's advice. He said, we did not need to draw lines between people and between friends, but rather we all needed to do what would be friendly, honest, and kind to everyone. We took my father's advice. The Treehouse Club was around for about 4 years in our neighbor's apple tree, and dozens upon dozens of kids in our neighborhood used that treehouse and enjoyed it and took care of it. It was in the Treehouse Club I began to believe that every person God makes is of equal importance, and each should be welcomed with friendliness and kindness. Thanks, Dad, for planting that idea. Thanks for being that way most of the time yourself. And an extravagant welcome is what we discovered that life is all about. And so in honoring my own father today, I'd also honor fathers in general and parents as well, just in general, for loving their family, even through families and even through tough times. Every parent has times of exasperation when the events of a day seem to go from bad to worse. I'd like to give you a short illustration of that. It just makes me laugh if I can get through it without laughing. It's not mine, it's written by another author, but it's great, I think. A bruised and bandaged workman related his experience with these words about how things can go from worse to worser. When I got to the building, he said, I found that the hurricane had knocked some bricks off the top. So I rigged up a beam with a pulley at the top of the building, and I hoisted up a couple of barrels full of bricks. When I had fixed the damaged area, there were lots of bricks left over, so I went to the bottom. I began untying the knot and releasing the line. Unfortunately, the barrel of bricks at the top were much heavier than I was, and it lifted me right off the ground, and because I was too high to let go, I hung on, and the barrel started coming down and jerked me off the ground. I met the barrel of bricks coming down halfway. In passing, I received a hard blow on my shoulder, then continued to the top, banging my head against the beam, getting my fingers pinched in the pulley. When the barrel hit the ground hard, it burst its bottom. The bricks spilled out. I was now heavier than the barrel. Yes. So I started down again at high speed. Halfway down, I met the barrel coming up. And received severe injuries to my shins. When I hit the ground, I landed on a pile of spilled bricks for some more cuts and bruises, and at that point I lost my presence of mind. I let go of my grip on the line, and of course that meant the barrel at the top was free to fall. Landed on my head, putting me in the hospital, and I respectfully request a sick leave. Well, parenting isn't quite like that, but there are tough days when the problems one confronts are just not 2 or 3, but more than usual. And sometimes it really does seem like it's pouring when it's raining. Today we honor fathers, we honor parents, we honor everyone who takes care of children and reaches out to them with love and care. For they sometimes have tough days. Sometimes we make them tougher. Dads, do not lose heart if they are connected in their relationship with the capable hand of God. The Bible both reminds us to honor fathers and our mothers, and it also reminds us to honor our children. That in part is what Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4, is getting at when it urges fathers to avoid provoking anger in their children. Try to avoid it, but rather to teach and demonstrate the faith and the ways of God instead. You know how the echo of one's voice comes back to you when you shout loud enough across the valley, and it says what you just said back to you? Same is so often true of relationships. What rolls out of you to someone else often rolls back to you, looking and sounding a lot the same. Children often echo their parents. Pupils in a classroom often echo their teachers. It goes on and on and on. People echo the way people are at their church. The echo reflects those same characteristics almost without exception. Ephesians 6, chapter 6, verse 4 reminds us to fill our words and our messages to those we love with guidance and structure in the direction of the will of God. For instance, smiles breed smiles. One writer said a positive attitude is as contagious as the flu. Unfortunately, so are frowns and sighs and harsh, abrasive words. So I honor my Father's Day. May you do the same for yours, and may all parents be inspired by God to pass the baton of a living faith in God unto their children. Let's do that in our Sunday school, everywhere we are. You don't have to be a parent to do that. Wherever there are children, they see your example. Let us pray. We thank you, O God, for those who have cared for us, raised us, often sacrificed for us, been patient with us, forgiving and affirming of us, for loving us unconditionally as Jesus loves. Amen.